Hi, do you struggle with understanding, styling, or cutting textured hair? Well, today we are going to relieve all that stress. My name is Jemison. I'm a guest artist with Schwarzkopf Professional, and let's get started. So before cutting, it's very important to prep hair with texture. I used Hydrate from our Fiber Clinics line, and what's going to happen is it infuses moisture in the hair and tames frizz. So we're going to actually section the hair in two parts, starting at the end of the eyebrow, all the way to the occipital. This parting is going to be a diagonal line that sits right at the occipital area. You're going to repeat on both sides. So to begin the haircut, we're actually going to begin on the side area, and this is going to be an undercut. So it's going to be fitted in the head, all around the sides, so everything below the V that we just created, it's going to be fitted to the head. Now there's a couple of pointers that you want to think about before you actually start cutting textured hair low. And so what I did, and I'll do it all the time in the salon, I'll take a test strand and cut the hair low just to see how the texture is going to be, because it's very important on what part of the curl that you cut on, because that's what's going to dictate if that hair stay curly or if it's going to lay straight or if it's going to stick out. So that's very important to know. However, I am going to be working with scissor over comb, so it's going to be quite low, but these are just some tips that you should really think about when approaching cutting textured hair low. So I'm going to start taking diagonal sections, basically diagonal back sections. And I find whenever I'm cutting the hair really fitted to the head, that diagonal back sections work well for me. However, it just depends on what your overall look is going to be, right? Taking fine sections when you're cutting textured hair is very important because, like I said, you want to familiarize yourself with the curl pattern, and taking fine sections will keep you connected to the hair as you work. So now we're going to start with a diagonal parting. It's going to automatically move you into the back section. So this diagonal part is actually going to extend into the nape area. And always you're using your previously cut section as your guide. And just keep working that same guide into your nape area. The length is always determined by the head of hair that you're working on, the client, the texture, and suitability. So those are some things you want to think about when you're establishing your length. So basically, I'm just going to continue that diagonal line. This line will continue right past the occipital area in the back. This is a note too, to really get in tight when you're creating fitted looks. Make sure that you work the head of hair that you're working on and the head with you. So here you'll notice that I've actually moved my model head a little forward, and that would allow me to get into the nape area there. Clean partings is the best thing you can do when you're cutting hair. That's the way you really maintain control. And so for here, what I'm doing now, when I talked about cross-checking, it's just basically because we're cutting at a diagonal, so you can just go in horizontally, lift the hair up, and it'll be your guide to let you know that you're on point while you're cutting. And so we have one more section, and pretty much you'll know when you're done with cutting this section. I talked about how that last section for this side is actually going to be slightly past the occipital. And this is great when you're cross-checking to just go over one section, and then it creates a lot of balance when you go in to cut your next section. And this section, this first side section is complete. Now what we're going to do is repeat the exact same process on the opposite side. So now as we move into the nape area with cutting the opposing side, when I talked about the diagonal part from the previously cut section, actually going over into the next section slightly. So here's where you could see that the hair will connect and your guides meet up, which lets you know that you're on point and your haircut is balanced. And so now I'm just going to continue. And basically what's going to happen is you're going to run out of hair in the nape area, which is totally fine because it's almost like that's when you start to cross-check your work again. And here's our last section. And actually, that section is just a little heavy. And like I said, when you're cutting textured hair, it's important to make those small adjustments and say, you know what, I'm gonna remove some hair and make that section finer, even though it appears like it could be one section. Those are like the important parts of cutting textured hair. It's just making those small adjustments. And you see, it's just a small amount of hair, but it's totally worth taking that extra time for your work. So we have both sides completed. So because of the necessary dampness for cutting textured hair for control, what we're going to have to do is for the undercut section that we have here for the sides and the back, now I'm just going to rough dry this area a bit so that I can scissor over comb and make this a little bit more fitted and tight into the head shape. Basically, with scissor over comb, you just want to make sure that you keep your scissors moving while the comb is moving. Something to note, when I talked about your comb being your guide with scissor over comb, you want to think about how you want that transition to happen. So we're going to start with the tighter teeth. You decide when you want to start using the larger teeth where there's going to be more hair, because you want it to be a graduation of the hair going from short to a bit longer. So now to move on to the back area, and you'll notice the previously cut section, which is your undercut section, have been cut in really tight with scissor over comb. And so basically we've subdivided the back area and the top area, but we are going to connect them. So what's going to happen here is we're going to leave this hair disconnected, but what I would suggest before you actually start going in and cutting the lengths, pay attention to what you want that hair to be. Pay attention to the weight of the hair, the weight that you want to have left, or the weight that you want to take off as your guide. So basically what I'm going to do is start with the center parting here. Take a vertical section. And just kind of visualize where I want this hair to fall. It's very important when you're cutting hair. Combing that hair straight out at a 45-degree angle. And by cutting the hair at a 45-degree angle, I'm going to have some weight. And this is the back area. So now you can really start to see the shape come alive. And by cutting at that 45-degree angle, it gave the hair a nice bevel here to fall over that undercut area, which is going to be really nice when we style the hair out. So now that we've cut the back area, we're going to actually move into the front area. Take a center vertical part, and now we're actually going to connect this section to the previously cut back section. A straight part down the middle, and divide the rest of the hair in two sections. So before you establish your length in the front, what I would suggest is just to think about exactly where you want for this hair to fall. I've learned this through years of cutting, and not predetermining the length will create extra work. So if you just take a quick minute just to visualize exactly where you want that hair to fall and establish your guide, when you're working through the back area, it will be easier to connect this hair with the length. So I'll give you a great example of that when I start. And you can start your haircut however you want. It's the technique that you want to focus on. So throughout this area here is where we're going to get the lift throughout the top of the head, and we're going to get the length fall in the front, and then the length falls in the back. but throughout here is just going to be a layer where we're going to get that roundness, right? So a good example of predetermining your length, let's say if I want the hair to fall right at her nose area, I'm going to pick that hair up. And this is where I'll start my hair cutting. I'm just pulling the hair at a 90-degree angle from the head shape. And what happens is, if you predetermine your length, you're going to take off the weight that you want, and it's going to lessen the work for you, and you'll visually be able to see your haircut. Something else that you want to keep in mind when you are cutting textured hair is that the hair is going to shrink a bit when it dries. So make that shrinkage a part of your formula, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work back, taking my previously cut section, pulling the hair right at a 90. And so here, what's going to happen is you're going to pick up your last section in the back area and connect with your top section. You're going to continue this technique through both sides of the hair in the same manner. And if you choose, depending on the head of hair that you're working on, if you're working on textured hair and you want a softer fall, you do have the option of point cutting also. And what point cutting would do is just kind of break up the line and soften. So if you're working with textured hair that's a bit more coarse, then maybe you would want to take more of a point cut technique or approach. And so you could see here your volume building, right? So you're gonna have like a round shape. So now when you look here, when I talked about having that round shape where you're gonna have the length fall in the front and the length fall in the back, and you're gonna have your volume here. And you could see that come into life. So we've completed our cut, but I wanna add some additional weight removing tips. And when I first started cutting hair, these are the tips that I didn't have, and I'm very excited to share with you. So basically what's gonna happen is your cut is complete. You're gonna take two diagonal forward sections on both sides. Now, how many parts you take depends on the head of hair that you're working on and the client that you're working on. So don't feel you have to stay with two sections. And basically what those sections is, I'm just combing those sections out. And what I'm going to do is comb this section back. And you could see the weight that's here. And what we're going to do is just chip into this weight and remove that corner. And what this is going to do is open up this side area and create movement in your shape to where you can move the hair from left to right. And it's not going to be much hair that you remove, but you will be amazed how just removing small corners from your haircut would influence movement. So basically what happens is it just softens the hair. Next, what we're going to do, just to break and create a little more softness in the front area here, what we're going to do is just take a center parting and in the salon, I do this a lot with texturizing shears. And just pull that hair forward and point cut and make this area a bit softer here. And what I'm going to do, I took a center vertical parting, and now what I'm going to do is take a diagonal from that center and pull straight forward and just point cut. On the opposite side, from the center, I'm going to take one more diagonal forward part, pull the hair forward, and I'm actually going to turn so you could see exactly what I'm doing here. So it's a diagonal forward part, pulling straight to the center and just softening the hair here. And like I said, in the salon, I do this a lot with my texturizing shears. If you wanted to create even more increased texture, you can go in and break the hair apart by different techniques. And so now we're finished. For styling, I'm going to go in with Osis Grip. And so I like to use my fingers as my comb. And what I'm going to do is just apply the grip throughout the hair and basically just twist the hair. And then I'll go in and diffuse. So this is our finished look today. Just bringing the texture alive. So let us know what you think in comments. You could follow me at Miss Jemison _ on Instagram and let us know what you think.